Hey man, what's up? Hola amigo, ¿cómo estás? Guten Tag, wie geht's dir? Welcome to How to Choose a Nation slash Tank, World of Tanks Newbie Guide video. This video is all about just that. How do you pick a nation or how do you choose a tank or a line that you want to research in World of Tanks? Now this video is geared towards beginners, however it does have some help in here for some of you experienced players that are looking to branch out into maybe different nations, maybe branch out into different types of tanks. So be sure to watch it, either way, unless you're a very experienced player. If you're very experienced, then this video is not for you. So how is this going to work? Well, first I'm going to talk about the basic info of the tank so you get an understanding of why I'm going to make the recommendations that I'm going to make. And then I'm going to, make the recommendations. So first I'm giving you the reasons why, and then I'm going to give you my answers or what my recommendations are. So, starting off, there's 7 nations that you can choose from. Currently I'm selected on the Germany, but there's the United States, there's Great Britain, there is Germany itself, France, the Soviet Union, China, and Japan. Now each one of these nations tend to have the same kind of generalities towards the tanks. Some of these nations are better for newer players, some of them are better for a little bit more experienced players, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Now, when I'm giving the advice about the different nations, you got to realize that these are just generalities. It doesn't hold true for every single tank. I mean, you can see here just on your screen in front of you, there's an awful ton of German tanks on this screen. Not every single one of these tanks is going to follow the general rules that I'm giving you for them. Some of them are going to run counter to the general rules, and some of them don't have any glaring weaknesses, but on the same token, they don't have any exceptional strengths to them. They're kind of neutral or 50-50. It depends more on how you play rather than how good the tank is. Now, there are 5 different types of tanks that you can play in the game. There's light tanks, medium tanks, heavy tanks, self-propelled guns or SPGs or artillery, whatever you want to call them, and tank destroyers. On the screen in front of you, you can see these right here are SPGs. They're represented by a square. There are also the tank destroyers right here, this line right here. They're represented by a triangle. There are light tanks right here. You can see with um, the diamond. That's a light tank. You can see it says Panzerkampfwagen 38T NA Elite Light Tank. Then there are the medium tanks, and it's like a diamond with one single line through it. And then there are heavy tanks, and it has 2 lines through it. Now each nation is going to have these 5 different types, generally speaking. Some of the nations in the game, like the Japanese, don't have heavy tanks because they're just being added to the game as this video is being created. But you have those 5 different types to choose from. Depending on the different type, it's going to have different strengths or weaknesses for that specific type. For example, you're not going to be using and driving a light tank like you would a heavy tank, but that's going to be covered in another video. So there's also different numbers of tanks depending on how long the nation was part of this game. So for example, Germany here, you can see there's a lot of tanks, a lot of light tanks, medium, heavy, all that kind of stuff. Japanese tanks, not so much. That's because the Japanese nation has just come in recently within the past few patches as of the date of this video in February 2014, whereas Germany, Russia, United States, these factions or these nations have been in the game for a lot longer. So without further ado, let's talk about the generalities of the different factions. First, with the United States, these are excellent tanks. These are strong tanks. They have very strong turrets. And in case you don't know what a turret is, it's this part of the tank right here where the gun attaches to. They have very strong turrets. And they're well balanced. There's no glaring weaknesses to these things, but on the same token, there's not exceptional speed to the weakness of a poor gun. They're very good overall tanks. You're going to see these things playing a lot when you're what's called hull down, and that would be, say, this is if you're facing the tank straight on. This is just going to be normal, but perhaps if the tank was looking up over the hill, so you'd have earth or the hill right here, and you could just see the hull will be down, and you could just see the turret. That's called hull down. Those tanks are USA tanks are great for that. As I said, they have strong turrets, and they're great overall. They're very strong nation overall. Moving on to Britain, these tanks have very fast guns. They shoot very quickly. However, they're not as powerful as some of the other guns that shoot a little bit more slowly. The medium tanks, which is this line right here, you see the Cromwell, Comet, Centurion 1, Centurion 7-1. The medium tanks are very fast. They have very good medium tanks in the British nation. The tank destroyers, however, tend to be a little bit slower, and they tend to can't really click it, so you get a close-up view of it. They tend to be slower. They tend to be more boxy, hard to turn. The if you're looking to play a tank destroyer, these are slow tanks. However, the guns are again very good on them. And there's not too much more to be said about the heavies or the light tanks. They're not really great on one hand, but they're not poor on the other hand either. Moving on to the German nation, the medium tanks here tend to be slower. The heavy tanks are decent. They're not the greatest. They're decent, especially this line right here. The Tiger 1, Tiger 2, E75, E100. Those are some of the better heavy tanks in the game. The other heavy line with the 3001P, the Tiger P45, VK4502, those are not very good tanks. Um, the guns for the German nation, the guns on these tanks tend to be some of the best in the game. Very accurate. When you get up to the higher tiers, that's what each one of these is called, as a tier 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 10. When you get up into the higher tiers, the guns tend to not only have exceptional accuracy, but tend to be very powerful as well. And the tank destroyers for this, let's see, where is it? This line right here from Martyr 2, Martyr 38T, the Stug 3, Jagdpanzer 4, the Jagdpanther, Jagdpanther 2, Jagdtiger, and the Jagdpanzer E100. These are all very, very good tank destroyers, some of the best tank destroyers in the game. Moving on to the French tanks. The French tanks are typically weaker tank destroyers until you start getting up into the higher tiers. When you start getting up into tiers 6 and above, then these tank destroyers tend to be very, very good. If you're looking for what are called autoloaders, which means you basically have like a magazine for the tank. And let's see. Right here, the AMX 5100, AMX 5120, AMX 50B. These are what's called autoloaders, which means you put 3 or 4 shells into the magazine, and the gun will fire 1 round, 2 rounds, 3, 4. It'll empty out the shells or empty out the magazine quickly, and then it takes a long time to reload them. Autoloaders are a particularly strong force now as the current patch. A lot of people are switching over to the autoloader tanks because they're very powerful, and they can unload a lot of ammunition very quickly. Other than that, the French nation isn't the greatest. If you want to play the French, it's best to go towards the autoloaders or the tank destroyers. The higher tier tank destroyers are very good. The autoloader heavy tanks are also very good as well. Moving on to Russia. Russia is also basically the opposite of the United States nation. These tanks are also very good. They're very well armored. They're a little bit slow. I mean, if you got all that armor on there, they're going to be a little bit slower. But some of these guns on here are straight up big and powerful. They're a little bit inaccurate, but when you hit somebody with it, it's going to put a hurt on them. The German tanks have better accuracy, but the Russians tend to have better damage. And then the medium tanks are fast medium tanks with very good armor around the turret, and they're very low profile tanks. Again, basically the United States and the Russian tanks in this game are, in a lot of respects, the same in terms of how good they are. moving on to the Chinese and the Japanese all at the same time. These are two nations that have just recently been put into the game, so there's not a ton of tanks as you can see, and they're kind of based off of the um, Russian tank system itself. These tanks tend to be uh, essentially like a weaker Russian tank. They don't have as good of armor, but they have fast. They're fast, but they don't have as good as armor, and the guns themselves are not as powerful. So moving on from that, what do you choose? Well, first, if you're new to the game and you've always wanted to play in, for example, a Tiger tank, you've always been interested in what the Tigers look like, and you've always wanted to play one of them, by all means, go down that line and play that tank. If you don't really have a care for any specific tank or any specific nation, then I would recommend either, if you're a new player, the United States tanks, and then it depends if you want to play a medium heavy self-propelled gun or a tank destroyer, or the Russian tanks. These tend to be the best two nations for new players. Now, if you are a little bit more experienced player, you could go with either the British mediums, because they have very good mediums, or the German heavy, which is again going down the Tiger line, or the German tank destroyers, which would be right here. The Stug, Jagdpanzer IV, Jagdpanther. Now these nations, the British and the German factions, or the German nations, they tend to be a little bit more difficult for new players. And that's why I don't recommend them, because some of the tanks, they don't have, these are some of the tanks that they don't have the glaring weaknesses that I was talking about earlier. They're kind of the 50-50 tanks. They don't have the glaring weaknesses, but on the other hand, they don't have exceptional performance either. You have to be a little bit better of a player to understand maneuver and positioning and things of that nature to help you succeed to the best of your ability in it. And then finally, if you're a patient player, if you're going to spend some money on the game, then go for whatever you want. You can go for the French tanks, the Japanese or the Chinese tanks. The reason why I don't recommend the French TD line is because you have to kind of wait till you get to the higher tiers, tier 6 and above, before it starts to get fun, before the tanks start to get a little bit more powerful. But that's the general understanding of the tanks themselves, of the nations themselves, and how to choose one. Now, the important thing to remember is if you screw up and say you start going down a line and you don't want to play that line anymore, don't worry. You can always come back. I mean, you've got more than one slot here. You can choose different. Say you've been playing towards the Tiger 2 like I have here, and you decide, you know what, I don't want Tiger 2 anymore. I want to go for a British medium. Go ahead. You can go right back to your tech tree, buy the tank, and just start working your way down it. So don't worry about that. It's just, these are general guidelines that you should consider if you're just new to the game or if you're looking to change things up. So, if you have any questions, any comments or anything like that, put it down below the video in the comments. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. And if not, there's always other people. The one thing about World of Tanks is the community is very helpful. If you have any questions about the tanks, I will help you, or other people of this World of Tanks community that watch my videos will also be more than happy, and oftentimes they'll come down and correct my mistakes, or they'll help answer other questions. Not only the people who watch this video are very helpful, but in general the World of Tanks community is also very helpful. So with that, again, if you have any questions, please put it down in the comments. Please like the video, favorite it, and comment on it, because it helps let me know that what I'm saying is helpful to you, and it helps other people who watch these videos understand that, hey, this is helpful. I found it helpful. So with that, also subscribe for some more help. And if you're new to the channel, I cover a lot about World of Tanks, the tactics, the strategies, map strategies, tank reviews, all that kind of stuff, newbie guides. Subscribe to the channel for a ton more World of Tanks content, and I hope to see you next time. You take care, and have a good day, and good luck with the game, man. Take care. Bye.